Hi, grade 11s. Okay, so let's talk about online banking today. This lesson is going to just be mostly information and not really any writing out any equations or anything, but this is actually really important information and it's a great unit to talk about it. So we are going to talk about this conceptually mostly. Okay, so online banking is technically the newest way to manage your money, even though it's not really new anymore. And it's a great tool, but you can misuse it. And so I want to talk a little bit today about how to use it properly and how to make sure that you're not going to get into any accidental trouble with it. So first, we're going to talk about the advantages of online banking, and those are listed here. You can fill them in on your notes. The first one is that you can easily, quickly view and monitor your current balance, which is something that's harder to do when you need to go to the bank and do in person, like if you didn't have online banking, so that's really great. It's easy to process and complete transactions, so it's easy to send somebody money or deposit a check or that kind of thing, or pay a bill. That's another big one, again, which are harder to do if you don't have online banking because you have to go to the bank in person. The next one is it's always accessible, unlike bank branches, so it has no hours, right? You can log into your online banking anytime you want. And the last thing is that most paperwork can be completed online, which is also great. A lot of people don't like doing paperwork to begin with, but it is easier online. The disadvantages, however, are still there. Okay, so the first one, and we're going to talk about this more on the next page, is identity theft. This is actually a really big deal. People can steal your personal information if you don't have a good PIN or password, and we're going to talk about the issues with that, a little bit later on. Another issue is that the bank's website might crash, so you might not always be able to access your banking due to that, and that isn't up to you or your fault, even if it's just in the middle of the day. Next one, I personally find to be a major disadvantage. Customer service online is not very good a lot of the time, and it's harder to talk with somebody on the internet than it is to talk to somebody in person about any issues you might have or questions. So that's a downside. And the last thing is it can take longer to receive a deposit if you deposit a check or you get paid from your work, just depending on whether the bank clears it or not. Okay. Also worth noting, online banking, while it's available all the time, there are parts of it that aren't available all the time, like receiving a deposit, because the bank only processes stuff during the weekdays, so Monday to Friday. So even if you deposit a check on Saturday, you're not going to actually get the money into your account until Monday. So just keep that in mind. Okay, so let's talk about creating a safe PIN or password. So like we talked about up here, having a safe PIN or password is extremely important because otherwise you're at risk of identity theft. And so here are some tips for you can use to make a good password. So the first one is you want it to be a long password, okay? You don't want it to be like 3 letters, like hey, that's a bad password, okay? You want to use a combination of letters, numbers, and symbols. This makes it harder for people to guess. Okay, actually all of these things make it harder for people to guess, and so that's why using these tips will be a good idea. You want to use both uppercase and lowercase letters. This is a huge one. I'm going to highlight this and leave it here. Every account should have a different password. Don't reuse your passwords. Okay, that's a bad idea because if someone guesses one password, then they've guessed them all, and that's not a good idea. Of course, don't make it easy to guess in general. Some people use their own name as their password, which I think is a bad idea because that's an easy piece of information someone would know about you. And I read somewhere, I don't know if this is 100% true, but it wouldn't surprise me, is that the most used password is the word password, which is a terrible password. So don't do things like that. The next thing is don't use your personal information as your password, so things like your birthday or your license plate, because those are things people could get from you as well without having to do too much work, right? It's kind of like obvious information about you. And the last thing is don't use common passwords, which is similar to don't use an easy password to guess. Okay, let's go to the next page. We're going to talk about identity theft, and then we're going to just do a little bit of true and false at the bottom to make sure we understand all this information. Okay, so we have a definition here for identity theft, so you can copy that down. And essentially, it's using and acquiring somebody else's private information without their permission. Okay, so it's kind of like stealing it, really. So the first thing I would recommend to protect yourself from identity theft is don't give out your personal information. Okay, I know that sounds really straightforward, like don't give out your debit card PIN number or your online banking password, but you would be surprised actually how common it is for people to do that, and it's a bad idea. Okay. The next thing is on your computer or phone at home, you should use antivirus software. Okay. Lots of people don't do this anymore, but you should. It's a very good idea, and it prevents people from putting bugs in your computer that are going to track things like your passwords. The next thing is check your accounts regularly, okay? Monitor activity in them by making sure everything that you see on your account transaction list is stuff that you did, okay? So if you're checking it regularly, you're going to notice if something is out of place. But if you don't check it for a month or 2 months, there's no way you're going to remember every single thing that you bought or paid a bill or deposited a check, right? So you should check it regularly so you can see if things are out of place. The next thing is placing fraud alerts on your accounts. You can usually do that through settings. But sometimes you might actually have to go to the bank to do it. But, you have to go to the bank to set up a bank account usually, so you could just do it all in one go. Shred bills, paperwork, and other banking information. This is, again, what I'm going to leave highlighted because people don't do that very often, but they should, because if it has your address, your phone number, credit card info, especially, anything like that, people can use that to get more information about you, and it can be bad. And the last one, I'm going to highlight this in a completely different color and make it very obvious, okay? Do not ever, I can't say this enough, do your online banking on public Wi-Fi, okay? There's this podcast on Apple Podcasts, and I imagine on Spotify as well, or Stitcher or whatever, that talks about kind of the dangers of some internet things. It's called Hacked, and they talk about in one episode about how if you're doing confidential information on public Wi-Fi, it's like broadcasting it to the world, because public Wi-Fi doesn't have a password, so you don't have to log into it. And so anyone who knows anything about computers, more than the average person, I would say, but like anyone who knows anything about hacking or reading things online, they will be able to just like go look at the stuff you're doing on your computer without telling you. Your computer's not going to tell you. You'll have no idea, but they can just be like checking out your bank account while you're doing online banking, which is such a dangerous thing to do. Okay, so never do your online banking on public Wi-Fi ever, please. Okay, use your data instead. And if you don't have data, wait till you get home, or until you get to a place that has secure Wi-Fi where you need the password to get into it. Okay, all right, let's do some true and false, and then that's the whole lesson. So we are going to, I'm going to actually just pause for a second here. I would encourage you to pause the video, okay? Do the true or false. Look back on the notes if you need to figure it out. And then check your answers against mine. I'm going to go over them in just a second. Okay, let's do the answers. So I'm just going to use my highlighter to show you the true or false. All right, so you need your debit card and online banking password to bank online. So I know I didn't explicitly say this ahead of time, earlier in the notes, but that is true, okay? Your debit card number is your username, and then your banking password, of course, is your password to log into your online banking information. Okay, it is not safe to use personal information to create an online banking password. That was in our notes, and that is definitely true, okay? You don't want to be using information that other people could find out about you pretty easily. You cannot pay bills without online banking. Number 3. Nope, that is not true, okay? So you can, of course, pay bills online, doing online banking, definitely. But you could also go to the bank in person and pay them there. So it's not the only option online. You have both options. Online banking, number 4, is only available on weekdays. Okay, so if you remember earlier, we talked about how online banking, one of the benefits is that it is available all the time, not just during bank hours, and so that makes this false. Okay, it is available all the time. Number 5, online banking is safest on your personal computer or phone on your own Wi-Fi. That is definitely true. Okay, you don't want to be doing online banking on a public Wi-Fi like we just talked about, and it's usually a bad idea to do it on somebody else's device because they could be tracking it, especially if you're using a public computer at a library or something, or even at school, honestly, then it's possible. Let me rephrase that. The school is not tracking your work, don't worry, not like that, but it's possible that somebody who previously accessed the computer could have set up something, right, especially in a public place like a library, that would track your movements and send them your information. So not a good idea. Definitely do it on your own computer at home if you can. Okay, number 6. Financial institutions use encrypted technology to make sure your information is as safe as possible online. Okay, again, this wasn't in the notes, I know, but this is kind of more of a fun fact, and this is very true, okay? Banks use the highest technology and safety measures possible to keep your information safe, and your information is encrypted, which means that you would need a code to understand it even if someone was to hack in. Okay, bills are paid. So number 7, bills paid online are not processed until the next business day. That's true. Okay, we did talk about that earlier in the notes. If you do something on your online banking, it will not get finished on the bank's end until the next business day. So if you do something late at night, like at 11:30 or something, or at 3 in the morning, I don't know why you'd be awake then, but if you were, then you will not see the effect of that in your bank account until the next day when the bank opens again. Okay, and then number 8, last but not least, it is important to log out every time you bank online. Absolutely. Okay, I feel like I've kind of nailed this one home already, talked about it enough today. Anytime you do any any banking that has to do with any personal information, you should always log out so that no one else can access your stuff, even if it's on your own phone. What if you lost your phone, right? Then someone could see it if you didn't log out. Or even if it's on your personal computer, same thing. What if you didn't log out and then someone stole your computer? That would be really bad. Okay, so definitely true. You want to log out every single time you bank online. Okay, that's it for today's lesson. I will be posting the 3rd lesson shortly. Okay, have a good day, ladies.